The story opens and we see a classroom where a group of students is bullying a boy. Meanwhile, Sion, a quiet and studious student, remains absorbed in his studies, keeping himself busy. Sion's intelligence sets him apart as the top student in the class. The leader of the bullies, noticing Sion's unassuming nature, decides to single him out. He orders one of his accomplices to hit Sion with a shoe, causing a disturbance. When Sion looks up, the leader feigns an apology, but it's clear he's trying to provoke him. Sion, maintaining his composure, calmly warns the leader to be careful in the future. However, the leader's ego is bruised, and he starts intimidating Sion, as he and his gang regularly bully weaker students for fun. At the same time, a group of students from another class enters, angry at Suho for flirting with one of their friends. We are introduced to Suho, who works as a food delivery boy at night and sleeps in class during the day. Despite his laid-back attitude towards his studies, Suho is a professional fighter, excelling in every physical activity. When he sees the students looking for him, Suho tries to explain that it wasn't his fault, claiming the girl was pursuing him. They don't believe him and attack, but Suho easily defeats them, leaving the class bullies terrified of him. Later, we see Sion's father preparing to leave for a 2-week work trip, but Sion is indifferent. His parents separated years ago, and since then, his life has revolved around his studies. Without friends, he spends most of his time studying. Despite his academic success, he constantly misses his mother, who no longer lives with him. The next morning, the students have a physical education class, and during the race, Suho easily finishes first, while Sion comes in last, struggling with physical activities. The bullies mock Sion, but Suho, disliking their behavior, steps in and silences them by beating one of the bullies. None of them retaliates, too scared of Suho. The following day, a new student joins the class, and Young Bin, the leader of the bullies, immediately targets him due to his physical weakness. When Sion arrives and sees Young Bin sitting in his seat and bullying the new student, he demands that Young Bin move. This only angers Young Bin, leading to a confrontation. However, Suho, who is trying to sleep, tells them to be quiet, and Young Bin, not wanting to mess with Suho, leaves. Later, Young Bin and his friends meet at a club, plotting to ensure Sion fails his exams since they know how much he values his studies. The next morning, during a test, Young Bin coerces the new student to stick something onto Sion's neck, which the new student reluctantly does. The substance makes Sion feel dizzy, and he struggles to see the exam questions clearly. He rushes to the bathroom to wash his face but returns in a frustrated state, unable to recall the answers. When he finds the item on his neck, he realizes who is responsible. For the first time, Sion becomes enraged. He confronts Young Bin and his friend, shoving a pen into one of their mouths and then attacking Young Bin with a book, knocking him unconscious while recalling Newton's laws. Just as Sion is about to seriously harm Young Bin, Suho intervenes, pushing Sion away. In a fit of anger, Sion grabs a chair to attack Suho, as the drug on his neck had intensified his rage. At that moment, the teacher arrives, and Sion calms down. The teacher takes Sion to the hospital to apologize to Young Bin, but Young Bin's mother becomes furious and threatens to send Sion to a juvenile center. Sion, however, exposes the drugs hidden in Young Bin's bag, revealing the truth. Young Bin's mother, unaware of her son's drug involvement, turns her anger on him. The next morning, in class, Young Bin's friends threaten Sion, demanding he meet them after class. Unfazed, Sion tells them to handle it immediately. He takes them to the bathroom, locking the door, and pulls out his pen, looking at them menacingly. Both bullies, terrified, realize that Sion might kill them. Satisfied with their fear, Sion leaves. The entire class is impressed by Sion's newfound confidence. The new student later tries to apologize to Sion for putting the drug on his neck, but Sion refuses to forgive him, leaving the new student feeling guilty. Meanwhile, Young Bin hires his cousin, a thug he used to take drugs with, to kill Sion. In the school canteen, Sion is having lunch with Suho and apologizes for his earlier behavior. Although they talk, Sion doesn't smile once, having forgotten how. The other students are surprised to see them together, as Sion is talking to someone for the first time. When Sion leaves class later, Young Bin and his thug cousin block his way, punching him and dragging him to an isolated location. The new student witnesses this and rushes to inform Suho, asking him to help Sion. Initially, Suho refuses, stating that Sion isn't his friend. However, when the new student offers money in exchange for help, Suho agrees, and they set out to find Sion on Suho's scooter. Meanwhile, Sion uses his knowledge of physics to fend off his attackers, but they eventually overpower him. Suho arrives just in time to rescue him. As the thug and Suho fight, young Ben and his friends try to break Sion's hand to stop him from studying. The new student steps in to save Sion, and Suho defeats the thug, forcing him to retreat with his gang. Afterward, Suho invites the new student and Sion to a restaurant. Although Sion hesitates, worried about missing his tutoring session, Suho convinces him to go. For the first time, Sion skips class, and the three enjoy a meal together. The new student, coming from a wealthy family, pays the bill. For the first time in his life, Sion feels genuinely happy in their company, marking the beginning of changes in his life. As they begin hanging out more often, they gradually become close friends. Meanwhile, the thug who lost to Suho faces severe punishment from his boss, Gilsu. Later, while shopping, Sion encounters a girl who turns out to be a member of the notorious Josie gang. She is hired by young Ben to beat Sion. As it starts raining outside and the girl has no umbrella, Sion offers to help her. They head to a restaurant along the way, where the girl insists on saving her number in Sion's phone. It turns out that the girl isn't actually bad at heart. She feels that Sion is her type. The next morning, we see Sion back in class. Young Ben asks Sion to speak with him alone, but Suho and the new boy accompany Sion. When they arrive, young Ben bows in front of Sion and pleads with him to lie to his mother, claiming the drugs weren't his, as she is planning to send him to boarding school, which young Ben wants to avoid. Moved by his plea, Sion agrees to help, but young Ben deceives him. They are taken to a deserted place where the drug addict, his boss, and his men are already waiting. The girl Sion helped the previous night is also there. The boss demands that Suho pay him 15 million within 3 days, threatening to kill all three if he doesn't comply. He makes the threat because he feels humiliated that someone defeated his gang member. Initially dismissing him as just a regular thug, Suho is shocked when the boss cuts his hand, warning him, "I'm not joking." After making his point, the boss leaves, and his men start watching the trio, tracking their homes and whereabouts. Sion secretly calls the girl and arranges to meet. When they meet, the girl warns him that the boss is very dangerous. Sion asks why she works for him and if she's happy with it, but she doesn't have an answer because she's truly unhappy but too afraid to leave due to the boss's control. On the other hand, Sion's rich friend steals his father's watch, sells it, and raises the 15 million. He offers the money to Sion and Suho, but Sion refuses, saying, "I have proof against the boss's illegal activities, and I'm going to report it to the police." At this point, we flash back to when the girl told Sion all about her boss's criminal operations, how he uses a fake money app to scam people, distributes drugs to get people addicted, and smuggles children. Back in the present, Suho tells Sion, "The police won't believe just the photos, we need to catch them red-handed." They devise a plan. Suho will locate the boss's hideout, and Sion will bring the police. Suho approaches the boss, saying, "I know all about your dirty business, but I can help expand it since the kids at school are afraid of me." The boss, intrigued, agrees to meet and they drive off together. Meanwhile, Sion runs to call the police, and the rich boy follows Suho to assist when needed. Suho uses his watch to send his location to Sion. They all head to the hideout, where they discover that the boss has already killed Suho, having learned from his gang members that Suho was betraying him. Just as the police are expected to arrive, the third friend shows up, but the boss captures him too. When Sion arrives with the police, they find the place empty, no evidence remains, and the gang has fled. Realizing the situation, Sion jumps a wall, heading toward the house where he tries calling Suho, but the call doesn't go through. Sensing failure, Sion feels a deep sense of defeat. Meanwhile, the boss is moving everyone to a new location. Along the way, he orders the drug addict to bring the girl, having discovered her involvement with Sion and the others. However, the drug addict, who has feelings for the girl, decides to confront the boss alone. The girl, knowing the danger, calls Sion, telling him she's heading to the boss's location and asks him to track her and bring the police, warning that the boss might kill them otherwise. Sion quickly calls the police while tracking her location. The boss, now enraged, beats the drug addict for failing to kill the girl. He sets out to eliminate Suho, his friends, and the girl. The drug addict, fed up with his life in the gang, intercepts the boss, attacking him from behind in a desperate attempt to escape his control. Despite being injured, the drug addict engages the boss in a brutal fight, but the boss continues beating him. At that moment, Sion arrives and declares, "Your game is over, the police are on their way." The sound of sirens grows louder, and the boss and his men begin to flee. However, the boss soon realizes that the sirens are coming from a sound on Seon's phone, which he had picked up. By this time, Seon has managed to free Suho and his friend. A fierce fight breaks out between the two groups. The boss slashes Seon's face with a knife just as the police arrive. In a last-ditch effort to escape, the boss flees, but Seon chases after him, determined not to let him get away. They both race toward an amusement park, with Suho joining the chase despite his injuries. Suho, fighting alongside Seon, eventually knocks the boss unconscious, though he is left badly injured. The police arrest everyone, but the drug addict helps the girl escape, ensuring she doesn't get caught up in the case. At the police station, Seon and his friend Seog are present. It's revealed that Seog's father's secretary has managed to remove their names from the case to protect the family's reputation, as Seog's father is a politician. After leaving the station, Seon heads to the hospital where Suho is being treated. The girl arrives, and Seon decides to stay with Suho for the night. He brings food for both Suho and the girl, surprising Suho with his unexpected kindness. For the first time in years, Seon laughs heartily, enjoying the adventure and the friendship he has found. Meanwhile, Seog is at home, being beaten by his father for stealing the watch, deepening the family's resentment toward him. That's all for this part. Click on the video for more content.